everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Also, want to say hello to those tuning in on Facebook, on LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Twitter. Glad you all could join us as well. Excited to welcome back my friend, award-winning author Robert Blake Whitehill. He's the author of the brand new book. We have it highlighted on the Amazon Live side, Blast, that features a character we've all gotten to know, and that is Ben Blackshaw. Now, if you guys have not heard about Ben Blackshaw, I was just saying to Robert, I'm going to give you guys a refresher course of who Ben Blackshaw is, how he came about, and what it's been like for Robert to see the response to him as well. Hello to you, Melissa, is joining us on the Amazon Live side. Thank you so much for the follow over there. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon Live side, you'll see a follow button either here in this corner or down below. Also, you will see the books by Robert in English, but also it also is published internationally as well. We're going to talk to him about that too. And of course, make sure you guys are following for all the updates. But Robert, welcome back to the broadcast.
Cyrus, it's so good to be here with you. Thanks so much for this chance to visit with you again. Always a pleasure.
The pleasure is definitely all mine. Tamika, we see you on the Facebook side. Tamika says, good evening, Cyrus and Robert. Tamika, glad you could join us as well. So
Hey,
I want to
Tamika.
begin where we are now. I was just saying to you before we went on here, because we have Blast on our list as a heads up on our summer reading list for 2023. Robert, and I was saying, can you believe we're already getting ready for summer? What has it been like for you to see the evolution of this character you've created in Ben Blackshaw, Robert, and how he's grown from book to book?
The evolution of Blackshaw has been a gift, a blessing, and a revelation all rolled into one. It's he started off as a simple story. I thought I was going to tell one story, and then it grew, and now we've got 6 titles out there. It's been an opportunity for me to spend more time with all the characters, including Ben Blackshaw, and to have an opportunity to deepen the characters, flesh them out, make them more relatable and real. And that's been a very important part of it for me and for the readers, so that it's not simply a slightly born identity style of story each time, but there's a deepening and there's value for the reader in reading each subsequent novel, because there's more to the guy and more to his girlfriend, who becomes his fiance, who becomes his wife, who becomes the mother of his child. I mean, everybody's got an arc, and it spans over 6 books. And it's really been interesting for me as a seat of the pants kind of writer to see how those surprises have cropped up for me and for readers.
Interesting. It's interesting to hear you say that. I have highlighted Robert right now for our Amazon Live audience. They're seeing Dead Rise, which is where this all began for you.
Yeah.
Did you know going into that book that this was a character that you wanted to spend some time and years with?
I had no idea. I thought I was going to write this story, then take off in a brand new direction. And the newness and novelty is certainly there, but from one book to the next. But I really thought it was going to be me hanging out with Ben Blackshaw, introducing him to the world, and goodbye. But instead, people said, when's the next one coming out? And I had no answer. I said, oh, okay, I'll do another one. And they said, well, how many more are you going to do? At that point, I committed to 10, and I'm still working on it. We got 6 going so far. But I had no idea. That's such an interesting question. It's one of those great surprises about a creative life that really is been very exciting for me.
You mentioned something that goes into what I wanted to talk about here today, Robert, and that is that this is a character that has grown. But I should say, by the time we see him in Blast, I mean, some time has passed, but we're not talking decades here. We've been able really almost to see him graduate from book to book, from one level to the next. You mentioned, of course, how his family situation changed. Family was a very big part of Dead Rise, and another way, the relationship of a father and son, but also I think in many ways kind of coming into one's own. The next book, of course, was Nitro Express. I have my copy here, Robert, as well. So I want to talk about how you made that decision, because you said you're kind of a, fly by the seat of your pants kind of storyteller. How did you decide if you had kind of said maybe 10 books, how did you decide where you wanted to take him from book to book?
Well, I knew that it was that keeping him kind of this aloof, 2-dimensional character was never going to satisfy. My original draft of Dead Rise was 800 pages. I knocked it back down to 400 for publication, and so people wouldn't get a hernia or sprain a disc trying to carry the book around. But the decision, I've talked to a lot of people and I listened to a lot of people. And one particular producer, Lane Schefter Bishop, she runs Vast Entertainment. She's a director, a writer in her own right. But she read Dead Rise and she said, break it out into more locales that have an international feel. So I took her advice, and that's something that I did. And it was shortly thereafter that, because of that international flavor that Nitro Express had, I got that call from Lucifer Verlag. And Lucifer Verlag is this wonderful publisher in Germany. And they said, we want Blackshaw. And I said, okay, I got Dead Rise, I got Nitro Express. And they said, no, we want Blackshaw. So they have a standing order with me for the Blackshaw books, as I can produce them and as they can put them through their translation service and bring them out. And they have, in Germany, they have made these books multi-category Kindle bestsellers, sometimes top 100 in 3 different categories at once.
Wow.
And I'm so glad that they reached out, because they are the result of this flavor. Now that's just going from Dead Rise, which is set mostly in the Chesapeake Bay area on Smith Island, to Nitro Express, which goes across the country. It goes into South America. It goes into Canada and the upper Arctic Circle reaches of Canada, and then back into the New York Chesapeake Bay area. Then we get into Tap Rack Bang, which again has more local feel, but it's got an international theme of human trafficking. So that's the international aspect of that. And then we go to Geronimo Hotshot, where we're dealing with the horrors of white supremacy and racism and drug trafficking, all centered around a locale at the border between the United States and Mexico, predominantly in Arizona. It's a little bit like Tolkien, the Hobbit movies, Battle of the Five Armies. We've got white supremacists, we've got a religious cult leader, we've got narco barons, all trying to vie for competition around that area. And it's very difficult for Blackshaw to negotiate it. He gets a little support from the FBI and some of his friends, but it's quite a journey for him there in Geronimo Hotshot. Then comes Dog and B. I don't know if I can say the word for female dog on camera here, but Dog and Bitch Island. And that one, again, we break it right out into the international field. We've got a conspiracy that I can't give you any spoilers because it's so exciting. But there's a big job that the United States did, but it's still undone at the time that Blackshaw enters this story. So thank you. That's the cover that Buffalo Gouge did for me, and he does most of the covers of the books now. Great artist based out in Oklahoma.
And I think to the point, and so you bring up another great question then for our readers then and our audience out there, Robert, because as you were kind of breaking down what Blackshaw is up against in these books, it kind of reminds me of with Blast. It's not that any of this is because of him, right? Like in Blast, he kind of just stumbles upon what he stumbles upon, which kind of starts this whole journey. So that brings up this question: do you kind of come up with a situation first and then see how Blackshaw will navigate it, or do you just think about where Blackshaw is as far as you have him at this point, and then seeing what you can throw at it?
It's a combination of the two. Okay. I came up with Blast, which is kind of set in the dead of winter, and the Chesapeake Bay, because it's brackish salt and fresh water, it doesn't freeze up terribly often. Oh, but when it does, it is a big deal, and massive ships get locked up, and sometimes people try to walk the 10 miles from Smith Island out to the mainland or the eastern shore. And so that situation presented itself in a very interesting way to me. I've always enjoyed that sort of a setting, and it had been a couple books just sort of percolating in my mind. But given that we have the adventure that constitutes the main plot lines of Blast, it occurred to me to, as you said, deal with Blackshaw where he is in his life. And where is he? He's married. He now has an infant son. and gallivanting off on this adrenal fervor for adventure and stimulation, even though it's in the United States on home soil. Um, we know he's done that in the past, but now there are stakes. The stakes are much higher because he is a husband, because he is a father, and he's got a deepening friendship with Knocker Ellis Hogan. For him to take an injury, get maimed, worst of all, perhaps even get killed, he's aware of these consequences.
Right.
And it was my privilege with my cousin Walter Whitehill, who served in Mac v. SOG in Vietnam. He would read these novels in advance and check them for the emotional reality. And, he had never told his folks what he did in Vietnam, the danger he was in. He told them he was in maintenance, just so that his parents would, maintenance of vehicles, just so his parents would not be worried about him. But as it happened, he was a sniper and took on very, very dangerous missions. Blackshaw doesn't have the luxury of hiding what he's doing from his family. And the fact is, his family, because of their backgrounds and the heritage that they have on Smith Island, they participate in the story. Far from protecting them, they are out there running missions of their own, simultaneous to the one that he's operating. And it's about how these two missions between himself, Knocker Ellis, Luana, and her coterie of Smith Islanders, how they're all weaving together in Blast. And somebody's looking after the baby back home. So they've all got to get home alive, because Luana's at risk too now.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next thing. We spent a good bit of time talking about Luann, because I think Luann has definitely become what I said to you before, and I really mean it, is that she's kind of become her own star, in these books, and so I love the fact that it has become a family business with all the risk and everything involved. Robert, so with that being said, then what has that been like for you? Because typically we've seen and I thought about this, I didn't ask you last time, but Blackshaw before did what he did to protect those that he loves. Now he's literally putting them in harm's way. What has that been like for you to see how the greater good has become bigger than his family, and he realizes even bigger than himself?
Well, it takes a family to take on that kind of accountability and responsibility. And as an author, being a guy of a certain age, I have always wanted to faithfully draw three-dimensional female characters. And Luana is kind of, unfortunately, or for good or ill, she's kind of the crash test dummy for me as a writer, to craft a female character who's strong, independent, smart, funny, and not a little bit dangerous on her own. And it's been my mission as an author to make sure that she is carefully drawn, and the other women that participate in Blast and the other stories are worthy of Smith Island. Because remember, I go to Smith Island. There are arts festivals there. I'm selling my books at those art festivals. I'm hearing from Smith Islanders what they think. I'm accountable to them for the quality of the characters. So my mission is, it's bigger than just being an author here in my office. I'm accountable to characters, I'm accountable to readers, and I'm accountable to faithfully present Smith Islanders in a light that shows their courage, their honesty, their bravery, and their toughness in a way that they can identify with and feel positive about. Because I would not be welcome on Smith Island if I were writing crap characters.
Gotcha. Well, I don't think we've had to worry about that at all from you,
Thank
Robert.
you.
I want to say, for those who are just tuning in, you're watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live primarily. We also stream it right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. We're talking with the one and only award-winning author, Robert Blake Whitehill. He's the author of several books. I have some of them here. And the newest, though, is Blast. I have it highlighted for you guys in the Amazon carousel. But Robert is more than just an author. He also is a storyteller. He's a screenwriter. So, Robert, we were talking before we went live here about something that is near and dear to you, what's happening right now that we see with the writers on strike. You are someone who's gotten to know as an author, but what has it been like for you to kind of introduce yourself as a screenwriter, but but also to think about what they are asking for themselves when it comes to the strike.
I think it's very important that, though I am not presently a Writers Guild member myself,
Mhm.
I think it's very important to stand with writers and screenwriters in particular as they go through this endurance test of attrition that is a writer's strike. The last one in '07 lasted for 100 days. This one could last longer because the stakes are much higher. We have the streamers that have enjoyed incredible bounty because people were locked up during the pandemic and had only streaming as entertainment among very few other options for those who weren't readers or who juggled books and streaming shows. And it's unfortunately writers, because it's new territory, weren't getting what they were used to getting when a broadcaster, for instance, would rebroadcast their work. And the streamers have been, touting to, Wall Street, touting to Deadline and Variety and Hollywood Reporter and all of those type of places, how successful they've been and how their earnings have been and how many hundreds of hours or thousands of hours a given show might have been screened. But they haven't been paying the writers. So anybody can look good to Wall Street if they're not paying their labor force. The profit margins are huge. This negotiation about the Writers Guild is about getting the writers what they're due. And I'm confident that everybody's going to do the right thing. It may take a while, but I think that those sorts of terms need to be doped out because it's not acceptable that there's these high amounts of profit and high subscriber numbers. And let's be aware, there's a lot of talk on Bloomberg, for example, that there might be another recession, and that's going to keep people from spending money out. They're going to be right back in front of their televisions. It's going to be like a second pandemic in a way. And so the streamers are going to have another almost a windfall, and the writers are going to miss out if these terms aren't squared away. So thanks for mentioning that. It's really important. And something that I learned just last evening is that not only are writers not writing, they are not pitching to producers. And in solidarity, producers are not entertaining pitches at this time so that no purchases are being made. Now, I say that as a person with a couple dogs in this hunt. I've got 2 screenplays in development. There's one that I co-wrote with Andrea Shane called Silver Hit, and Gina Goff is developing that. I've got Defiant that is in development with Legion M and the Walper organization with a fantastic team. But the pitching on that is going to settle down and not happen until the strike is settled. And I'm perfectly content with that fact. That's an important thing that we all need to observe as the Writers Guild and other organizations of producers and such get their terms squared away for how we're all going to be moving forward together happily in this brave new streaming world.
Yeah, that leads me back to Ben Blackshaw then as we wrap up here then, Robert, because one thing I was curious about that is in the news a whole lot this year, surprisingly for me, maybe not so much for you, and that is the rise of AI. Is that something you think Ben Blackshaw will be tackling himself?
That would happen for me more on the writer's side and, not using AI because I believe that there's a level of craft and skill and consistency and a little weirdness and grit and things of that nature and humor that I don't think AI is going to capture. It may work itself into a plot, but you and I have had a couple of conversations about Blast, and you yourself made an important point. You said Luana's kind of coming into her own. And I want to give you credit here, Cyrus, because you said, what if there were a story that focused more on Luana than it does currently on Ben Blackshaw? Blast was 50-50, Luana, Blackshaw. What if it were more balanced toward Luana as a main character of the plot? And I say this out of respect, not only for my desire to craft 3-dimensional female characters, but most of the audience, there's a majority of the reading audience are women. And I would like for them to have something that they could relate to, that they can feel where they are honestly rendered and represented in a way that that they can feel good about and that I can feel good about.
Right.
But That's your idea. I hope I'm up to the task for that in the coming story. I don't know what the story's going to be exactly. I got some ideas chasing around, but we'll see what's coming up.
Well, looking forward to for sure. Always a great conversation with you, Robert. Again, everyone, Robert Blake Whitehill has been our guest. Make sure you guys do pick up the books in the Ben Blackshaw series, as I mentioned, starting with Dead Rise, but the last book that's out currently is this one. It's Blast. And so you're able to pick it up. All of them are available here on Amazon. You got some see them there. You mentioned, you heard Robert mention, of course, the books also that are in Germany. We put those on the carousel for you guys as well to take a look at, be able to share with your friends too. Charlotte on Facebook says, "I can't wait to read it." Appreciate that, Charlotte. I mean, they're great books. I've enjoyed each one of them. And Charlotte, look, I got to blurb this one. So you can see my quote there on the back of it as well. On the back
Cyrus Webb, that's right.
So I appreciate
Top
that.
blurb of all.
I appreciate that, Robert. Robert, let our viewers know, how can they stay connected with you?
I think you can find Robert Blake Whitehill on Amazon or wherever you're getting your books. There's Ben Blackshaw. You can do a search for that. Or if you're curious, robertblakewhitehill.com, at RB Whitehill on Twitter. And of course, you can find me on Facebook as well. Real easy. Thanks so much for asking, Cyrus. I appreciate that.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Glad to have you. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon side, make sure you guys hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. And again, all the books by Robert, I have a few of them here, but you can get all of them either in print or the Kindle editions right here on Amazon. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. You all take care.